You know, as heartbreaking and discouraging as painting can be sometimes, it's great every once in a while to have one of those super victorious events, and I had one with this painting. This started out as a really ugly painting that had gone off the rails. I painted over it. I felt led to go buy fresh flowers and paint from life. I normally paint from photographs. I felt led, instead of using a vase, to use this glass pitcher, which I've never painted before. I felt led to cut it off halfway down. I've used all these beautiful layers of house paint to get this beautiful background, and I absolutely love it. This is the really loose, impressionistic, whimsical style that I have always wanted to be able to paint like this. I felt like it's always eluded me a little bit. I tend to be a very tight painter. That's something I've really struggled with, but I feel like this painting is as close as I've ever gotten to that kind of look that's just been my heart's desire. And if you'd like to see how I did this painting, I'd love for you to come along. Stay tuned. So this is that all-important stage for me of stopping, looking at a painting. What do I like? What's working? What would I like to change? And make those adjustments. Overall, I am so pleased with this painting. You know, for years I have looked at artists who paint very similarly to this, and I love the looseness, the whimsy of it, the colors, and I wanted to be able to paint that way, but my natural bent is to paint very, very tightly. It's been a real struggle for me, and I feel like this painting is the closest I've ever gotten to this kind of style, which has just been my heart's desire all these 10 years now trying to get here. So I'm very pleased with this overall. I love the colors. I love the house paints that I use for the foundation. I really love this flower a lot. I feel like this one has just gotten too washed out looking, too highlighted. So to fix that, I'm going to go back in and just kind of start over with the darks and then put my lights back on top of it. I'm not crazy about the throats of these two daffodils. I feel like they always catch my attention when I look at the painting. They're too harsh, too stark, something. They're like children who aren't behaving nicely and they're demanding your attention, and they shouldn't be at the moment. So I'm going to have to figure out something to calm those down a little bit. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm going to work on those. The other thing is, I'm not crazy about this daffodil peeking out behind the tulip. I just think it looks kind of odd. So I might take some of these little chrysanthemums and put them back there. And while I don't really object to this solid screaming orange right here, I think I am going to take a little wash of Naples yellow or white and put a little very thin wash over this side. And I would mention, most of the time, 99% of the time, I'm painting on very thin profile canvases. This is unusual. If you'll remember, I painted over this. It's unusual for me to have this thick profile. Normally, I paint the painting around the edges so it looks like the same painting on the side, but I really like this wide edge and having this more pronounced solid color. So I think I'm gonna touch that up and let the solid color be a nice contemporary looking frame for this. So those are the changes I'm gonna make. I really feel so encouraged to paint from real life, to continue experimenting with these house paints. I love painting glass. I can remember when I first started painting as an artist, I was so fascinated with glass. You know, how did they do that? And now that I'm getting to paint with it myself, I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things to paint. I may do a course soon on painting glass. I just think it's something you can have a lot of fun with, and it can add so much interest and coolness to your painting. I also love the placement of this. I like that this isn't just a vase centered in the middle of the painting. I like that you're only seeing the top part of it, that the flowers run off the side. I like the placement of this a lot. So I want to encourage you, as you're working on your paintings, to think about, is there a more expressive, interesting way to enlarge it? So maybe it's not so centered, that might make it a little more interesting. But yeah, I love this one. So let me make these changes and I'll let you take a look. So I thought I had gotten to the end of this painting. So this was where I was at the next to the last stage. There were still a few things that were bothering me a little bit. Let me show you those tweaks and improvements that I made. The first was those two tulips on the right side. I lightened them considerably and added more petals and changed the shape. I thought they looked a little incomplete, and I made more of that purple flower that's sticking out between them. Then I went in and added some more highlights to the stems in the water. I think that made a really big difference. I love seeing light filtering through. And if you remember the two daffodils I wasn't too happy with, I actually added a lot of pink to the petals and the trumpet on both of those. And I think that was really nice. And then this blue flower, I just kind of went over it again, beefed it up one more time. You know, one thing I like to do at the end of the painting, particularly if something has gone well, which doesn't always happen, I like to make a mental note of what about this painting worked. And number one, I would say paint over a painting that you have that hasn't worked, that's just taken up space, give it new life. Don't be afraid to paint from life. Painting this live scene made such a difference, I think, rather than painting from a photograph. And it allowed me to get exactly what I wanted. I used to be afraid of my drawings. I felt like they weren't good enough, and that made me want to use a projector or trace something. But if you want to paint loosely, painting from life, using a piece of chalk, that's going to be the ticket. You're never going to be a loose painter as long as you're tracing things. And don't be afraid to incorporate some glass or some elements that you've never used before. You might be surprised what you can do with it. If you would like slower, more intentional instruction, I have a number of very inexpensively priced courses and shorter tutorials on my website. I encourage you to check that out. The link in the description box below. And as always, a thumbs up and a subscribe always helps this little channel to grow. I appreciate your time. I don't take it lightly. Thanks so much for watching. God bless.